Tonight, how safe are you from car crime?
How long does it take to get the cars in this way?
Well, it's like having the key, isn't it?
The intruders breaking into your home to steal keys.
I feel because of the car that I chose to buy, I've put our family almost at risk for having that car there.
Is vehicle theft a police priority?
The vast majority of day-to-day police work is not directly concerned with crime.
And just how vulnerable could your keyless car be?
Some of the more high-end executive vehicles are actually easier to steal.
Good evening and welcome to the Tonight programme. Government figures published last month reveal yet another increase in car thefts. But how much of this is down to it being a low police priority? Former Metropolitan Police Officer Rav Wilding uncovers whether car crime is being investigated properly and why so many new vehicles are vulnerable to tech-savvy thieves.
After years of falling crime rates, car theft is on the rise again, significantly. Up an estimated 57,000 crimes in 2 years. This time last year, Tonight reported on the problem in Manchester. We were out with the police.
What we see more and more often now is people breaking into houses to get the key, to get the car, because that's the only way they can get it with the key.
And talking to victims.
We were woken by the dogs barking. Mark got up, look out the bedroom window.
When you look out, you see three guys in balaclavas, you realise that it's business.
A year on, we've decided to return to South Manchester to find out how big the problem is now. This is an area of Stockport called the Heatons. Here, there's approximately 12,500 homes spread over a few square miles. Tonight obtained data from Greater Manchester Police for the number of vehicle thefts experienced in this suburb just for October.
On the first day of the month on this street, a house was broken into, keys were taken and a car was stolen. On the same night, just around the corner, another break-in. This time, 3 sets of keys were stolen and 3 cars were taken. 4 days later, again in the same area, another house was broken into, another set of keys taken and another car stolen.
And so this pattern continued, day after day, street after street. In total, for this suburb of Stockport, 19 vehicles were stolen. That's over 3 a week. And that doesn't include the dozens of car break-ins and number plate thefts. Across the whole of South Manchester, the figure could run into hundreds. And that's just 1 month. Katie and Mark Hawley and Mike Holman's family both had their cars stolen in South Manchester last month. In both cases, thieves broke into their houses first to steal car keys. But despite a financial loss, it was having thieves in their house they found most traumatic.
You just feel completely and utterly violated, especially with children. The thought of someone coming into your house and being there while you're fast asleep, and actually their bedroom is closer to the stairs than ours, and little things like that start to play on your mind, and you feel insecure, you feel vulnerable, and I never thought I'd feel like that where we live.
Yeah, I think it is part of the fact that you feel actually targeted. I mean, we have a 5-month-old and we have a 3-year-old as well, and thankfully they found the keys. Had they not found the keys, that's what starts playing through your mind, and that's what you start worrying about what if.
Until you are a victim of this type of car crime, you may never have thought about the dilemma over what to do with your keys. Mark and Katie left the keys for their 2 Volkswagens out on display. In hindsight, they're glad they did this, rather than run the risk of having intruders come upstairs to find what they're looking for.
I'd rather have a financial impact on the family than a psychological impact on young children and the rest of the family. I feel that because of the car that I chose to buy, I've put our family almost at risk for having that car there.
Yeah. You haven't.
And that weighs heavily on my mind at the moment. So for someone just to come in, take the car and disappear, then at least the kids don't know that anyone came into the house. We've just told them that someone came and took the cars off the drive. They're none the wiser. So for me, had they have come into the house, the kids woken up, there'd been an altercation, whatever happened, I'd much rather be in a financial situation that I can't get out of than a psychological situation that we could have been facing.
Both families are considering buying old cars so they don't get broken into again.
I don't know what we're going to replace our cars with. Do we just buy cheap, old cars to get us from A to B? I've always liked my cars. It's one thing I enjoy. But after this, I don't want to put my family at risk.
It's kind of, what have we got to where we actually have to start compromising how we live our lives because of the way other people will take advantage?
For Mike, who had a Mercedes C-Class and had previously been a victim of car theft, what surprised him was what he thought was a lack of police interest.
The frustration really is a sense that not a lot seems to get done to actually prevent anything like this happening again. This time, it's almost like the police are apologetic and literally sat there apologising and frustrated and explaining how their day's been and how they wish they could investigate real police crime. But unfortunately, they're having to do, in this case, it was part of the job of the ambulance service, because they were actually taking people to the hospital because there wasn't enough people in the ambulance service that day. And they have to sit there in A&E with somebody who's waiting to be seen rather than actually going out and helping other people.
Greater Manchester Police told us that, with a reduction of almost a quarter of the force over the past few years, and more serious and complex crimes, we are making tough decisions on a daily basis about how we prioritise our resources. We have to focus on the crimes that represent the greatest threat, harm and risk to the people in our communities. They went on to say,
our resources cannot always be focused on crimes where there is less vulnerability, such as some car thefts, meaning some victims won't receive the response they expect. That doesn't mean that victims of vehicle crime aren't important to us.
Police numbers and the money forces receive has dropped by nearly a fifth in the last 8 years. And the idea that police are so busy with other work that they haven't time to investigate more traditional types of crime is a claim made by experts.
The vast majority of day-to-day police work is not directly concerned with crime. So it's not just about cuts to the police. Where there have been cuts to all of their partner services locally, you've got a lot of police officers who are tied up because they are waiting for an ambulance or social services or someone from mental health services to come and assess someone. They are in charge of someone who is vulnerable and they cannot responsibly leave them in order to deal with crime.
And research supports the fact that the police have other priorities. The Press Association looked at Home Office data and found with 3/4 of all car thefts, cases were closed with no suspect identified. Sentencing information from the Office of National Statistics can also be used to rank crimes by order of importance. While murder comes out on top, it turns out that car crime ranks very low and could be the reason why they're not investigated.
The list goes from homicide, obviously, and that is scored at about 8,000. And then the list goes right down to 5. And in that group of offences, which go from 5 up to 100, you've got most of the offences that the public is likely to experience, including car crime. And the only car crime that goes above 100 in this scoring system is aggravated vehicle theft. That's where violence is used to secure the car. Everything else scores on the lowest possible scoring system that the police are supposed to be responding to, so they're not getting looked at.
The issue of police priorities was in the spotlight last week when Sarah Thornton, the National Chief Police Council's chairwoman, said that forces should focus more on burglary, which is often part of car theft.
All policing is under great stress and strain, and we're not able to do some of the basics. So we've got to prioritise solving burglary and reducing violence ahead of those sorts of things.
But a new type of car crime is emerging, which is likely to be even less of a priority because the thief doesn't even have to break into a house first.
Back in the 80s and 90s, when teenagers were twocking, that's taking a vehicle without the owner's consent, they were hot-wiring cars like this in order to steal them. Then, in the 90s and noughties, cars like this had alarms and immobilisers, and that made them much harder to steal, and the crime rate went down. And now things have changed again. In modern high-end cars like this, and a lot of new cars, the key doesn't actually have to go into the ignition to start the car, and that can make them very vulnerable to theft.
Neil Horsburgh loves his Audi, but the model he's driving now wasn't his first. This time last year, he owned a car that really was his dream car.
My Audi A5 was my pride and joy. It was a car that I bought probably due to having a midlife crisis, I suppose. It was something that just always made you happy.
But last December, after a holiday in America, he returned to find that his car had gone.
After realising the car wasn't there, I checked to see if anybody had broken into the house, and I checked to see whether I still had the car keys hidden where I'd hidden them. And yes, I had all my sets of car keys, and that was when I learned about relay theft.
Relay theft is where two criminals work in partnership to steal a car. As this CCTV shows, it's fast and silent. It doesn't require any car keys or any need to force the locks and windows. Just black boxes bought off the internet. Thatchams is an engineering facility that tests all makes of cars for their safety and security. They showed us how easy it is to quickly steal this Volvo. Imagine this is your car key on a table in your hall. The first offender simply holds a device near the front door, whilst the other picks up the signal. Within seconds, your car has been started and stolen.
So Richard, what have we just seen there?
So essentially there's two bits of kit. One goes by the key, one goes by the car. The bit by the key boosts the signal from the key to the car, makes the car think the key's much closer, so it will open, you can get in, you can start the car, and off you drive.
Clive Wayne is a former senior police officer who now works for a company that tracks cars if they are stolen.
For many years, Clive, it seemed that it was the cheaper cars that were more at risk of being stolen because they were easy to get into, but it now seems that the more modern cars are actually the ones that seem to be most vulnerable.
Absolutely. For many years, particularly the more prestige manufacturers have focused more upon passenger comfort. Unfortunately, over a number of years, organised criminality has been very resourceful and reverse engineered much of the technology that's been put in place to the point now where you're absolutely right, some of the more high-end executive vehicles are actually easier to steal than perhaps a cheaper brand of vehicle that's out there on the market.
I went to meet a former prolific car thief who confirmed how easy it is to steal a car by this method.
How long does it take to get the cars in this way?
Well, it's like having the key, isn't it? So there you go.
Just literally let yourself in and off you go.
Yeah, off you go.
But what really surprised me was how easy it was to buy this relay equipment off the internet, and the price.
An electronic key programmer can be bought as little as 60 quid, and a relay box, 30 quid.
That's staggering. And is it easy to find online, presumably?
Very easy to find online.
Would you be able to show me now?
Yeah.
We're not obviously going to show the website, but you're just looking on.
Yeah.
Okay, you've already done that. That's just taken you seconds.
Yeah.
And £32.
Yeah.
And you found it for me straight away?
Yeah, straight away.
Audi told Tonight that it takes the illegal use of radio path lengthening systems very seriously, are working with the authorities and continually improving their security measures to prevent it. Volvo said relay theft is extremely rare, can affect any model of car, but new cars are more secure than ever. Volvo uses industry-standard technology and applies advanced encryptions to limit any remaining risks. They will continue working to improve vehicles in line with technological developments. Audi and Volvo are only two of a long list of recently manufactured UK cars to be found vulnerable to relay theft. ADAC, the German equivalent of the AA, have been testing cars since 2015 to see which ones are vulnerable. The majority of manufacturers have been tested, and many of their models. In all, ADAC have tested over 180 cars, and 178 failed.
Wir verwenden hier einen selbstgebauten Reichweitenverlängerer und überprüfen, ob man das Funksignal des Schlüssels bei den Keyless-Systemen verlängern kann. Fahrzeuge, die jetzt auf den Markt kommen, mit Keyless-Systemen, die nicht sicher sind, werden vermutlich in der Versicherungseinstufung teurer werden, weil das Diebstahlproblem ja immer größer wird.
British car security experts told Tonight that the German tests are genuine. And Thatchams also told us that hundreds of thousands of keyless cars are vulnerable. The West Midlands has one of the worst car theft problems in the UK. David Jameson is the crime commissioner for the region.
I think that is an extraordinary finding, that all these cars are failing this relay theft test. We know that, the crooks know that, the manufacturers know it. The question is, why are they selling cars between £20,000 and £80,000 where somebody can just walk up with a relay device against the house at 2 o'clock in the morning and be off with the car in 30 seconds? That is the question the manufacturers have got to answer.
One of the cars that did pass the test is the type that I'm driving now, the Range Rover. And according to experts that we've spoken to, the reason for this is that Range Rover actually spend more money on vehicle security than a lot of other manufacturers.
Earlier this year, David Jameson held a conference with the motor manufacturers to ask them what they're doing about the problem.
Jaguar Land Rover at the conference were quite open that they recognised that there was a problem, and I do applaud them for that, and one or two other manufacturers as well. But of course there's the many manufacturers that didn't turn up at all, who just said, oh, we're not attending. Some were quite positive that they were not going to attend, nothing to do with them.
Mercedes also appear to be catching up, with their new models having keys which no longer give out a signal when they are stationary, for example, when they're on a hook or in a drawer.
The key has a motion sensor in it, which after a short period of time of being still, switches the key off, and therefore the signal can't be picked up and relayed.
So the key on the bonnet of this car, because it's not moving, this door should not open.
That's right.
Well, let's give it a go. And sure enough, that's locked.
But what about all the nearly new cars which have been keyless for years, but don't have this anti-theft technology?
What they need to be doing is look at the cars they sold some years ago, and of course their cars last a long time because they're well made. How are they protecting those?
And in their statement to Tonight, Greater Manchester Police said, "We call on manufacturers to respond in the same positive way they have in the past, to design out new kinds of vehicle crime, which are evolving as technology changes." But the Society for Motor Manufacturers and Traders told Tonight,
industry takes vehicle crime extremely seriously and works to try to stay one step ahead of the criminals. Manufacturers are investing billions in security features. However, technology can only do so much. We call for action to stop the open sale of equipment which helps criminals steal cars, and have written to the Home Secretary to agree how this can be addressed.
so what's happening to these cars when they're stolen? Often they find their way into what's known as chop shops. As this footage shows, these are makeshift garages where cars are broken up for parts and sold for big profits online. Or they might end up leaving the country altogether.
The vehicle could actually be shipped overseas via shipping container via a port.
So, from the theft, it could literally be a matter of minutes before they could end up in a place like this, in one of these containers, and literally could be anywhere around the world, potentially.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So, with that in mind, this seems like there's a lot more thought going into this particular type of crime than an opportunist theft where someone smashes a window and grabs what's inside. There seems to be a lot more planning going into this.
There's no doubt about that. The vehicles are stolen to order. There is a high level of organised criminality attached to this type of crime.
Tonight has been told that the most common destinations for many high-end vehicles is Eastern Europe and North Africa. But as we've heard, the police are unlikely to investigate, not only because it's a low priority, but because often there's not the evidence to secure a conviction.
I know the police are going through a tough time, but why do you think that is, that so many are going undetected?
I think because it's very difficult, particularly for keyless theft, because usually there is nothing by way of a scene of crime, so there's no broken glass, there's nothing there in terms of evidence that the vehicle's been broken into, and the offenders will routinely wear face coverings.
So what can be done to protect your new keyless car? Thatcham say pay a visit to your car dealer to see if there might be a software update on your key fob. But curiously, two other solutions exist, which rely on old technology. Mark Sylvester is a crime prevention manager with West Midlands Police.
Today we're going to visit a member of the public who's got some concerns around vehicle crime.
Mark is meeting Solihull resident Paul McGrory.
Morning, Paul. Morning.
Who wants some advice on how to protect his £40,000 one-year-old Mercedes.
The first thing we've got is a Faraday bag. There's lots of stuff out there in the media world around car keys in tins and microwaves.
Yep, I've heard that, yep.
Seal it up completely, and that key will no longer talk to the car. The other item I've got is a full steering lock for the vehicle.
Okay.
Application of this is as simple as latching it around.
Right.
And then locking it into position.
Okay.
But while we wait for manufacturers to catch up with the criminals, our former car thief agrees that old technology is the answer for now.
So do you think it's worth us having the mechanical security like a steering wheel lock or similar?
So if you've got a disc lock on one car and the car parked next to it and got a disc lock, which one are you going to steal?
So they're going to look for the easy option?
Easier option, yeah.
Fortunately for car owners, Wolfie is no longer offending. In a statement to the programme, the government said,
"We are determined to understand the recent rises in vehicle theft and what can be done to prevent them. We recognise crime is changing and have provided a £13 billion settlement to ensure the police have the resources they need."
But with police resources stretched and criminals increasingly turning to technology to steal cars, the battle to keep a lid on car crime will continue. As will the painful memory for an increasing number of families who are becoming the victims of burglary and car theft.
If you'd like to find out how you can protect your keyless car from theft, and for any more information about tonight's programme, just visit our website at itv.com/tonight. Until next time, good evening and thanks for watching.
Coming up next week, guest reporter Richard Bacon heads back to Mansfield, his hometown, to look at immigration and what's next for us after Brexit.